Thank you. Thank you. I thought you'd talk to my wife, Jim. We're going to talk about my ups and downs or something. So, thank you. That's very kind. It's humbling and fun to come in here today. And I won't name names, but I can go around this room and see lots of faces and friends and people I grew up with and people who used to stick microphones in my face. Mark Hebert, a long time ago when I worked for the governor. So it is fun to be here, and I thank you very much. What I'd like to do is take just a minute and tell you a little bit. You know, we read a lot about John Reinhardt's name was mentioned in signature, and the mayor does a great job, and Jim and the university have done a terrific job of elevating this whole thing of senior housing in Louisville. And we talk about it a lot, but I thought it might just help a second to tell you a little bit about what sort of, just from one guy's perspective, what's here in Louisville and sort of the wealth of talent that you've got, and frankly, what a kind of small, crazy world it is. I came to, people ask me how I got into this business, and Vicki Yates Brown and I were we made law partner the same day, Vicki, and she and I go back a lot of years, and we're partners at Greenbaum Dahl together, which now has a different name, I guess, as of a week or two ago, a long time ago. And I came to this business completely by accident. I had gone to work for Brereton in the early 90s, and the thing I loved about state government, and people say, well, you're a lawyer, you go over there, you don't make any money, what are you doing? And it's state government, it's a bunch of bureaucrats. I came back with a really rich experience. I mean, not only getting to pick brains of huge minds. The reason Jim Ramsey got a call was because he was one of the 2 or 3 men in the state, happened to be men, guys that were sort of the chief economists that had worked for the state, that actually understood how it works. I mean, everybody talks and bashes government and this, that, and the other, but understanding what the income tax is and the sales tax and how it works and how property taxes work and how bonded indebtedness works and how you get ratings on your debt and how you build schools and all of that stuff that we as taxpayers take for granted. Ramsey, probably the most influential mind on that particular area of state government in the last 25 years, and was a resource. He and I were just chuckling to Wallace Wilkinson, God rest his soul, to Paul Patton, Brereton Jones, and Martha Lane Collins, and on and on and on, because he gets it. I mean, he understands the big picture. So I'd gone over there, and I loved working there. I mean, I had a ball. You don't make any money, by the way, doing it, but you do have a lot of fun doing it. And it is creative, energetic work, and working for a guy like Brereton, where you didn't have to look over your shoulder in terms of corruption issues or ethics issues, and he gave us a free rein to do some creative, interesting things. Bill Lear was a really bright state rep, many of you know, from Lexington, Kentucky, and actually was wrote all the economic development statutes that have had sort of an impact. We've sort of outgrown them now, this tax credit world we've lived in the last 15 or 20 years. But Lear was a big thinker in state government, and he and I were fortunate enough to, we spent a lot of time with Owsley Brown, God rest his soul, and a whole bunch of corporate leaders. David Jones Sr. gave us all their tax stabs, and we wrote this terrific, and got actually buying. It's interesting, we had union buying, we had guys like Larry Clark, we had, I mean, a whole array of different folks from different sides of our economy in Kentucky bought into a tax reform package, and then, like a lot of things in politics, it promptly went on a shelf where it's sat, I think, for the last 25 years. So it'll be interesting. This governor's talking about it. It'll be interesting to see whether we dust any of that off. But as I did that work over there, I got a midlife itch. The thing I liked about it was that I was in a position to help shape policy and to sort of manage things. Good lawyers are fire jumpers. They kind of jump in, they solve a problem, and then you kind of move on to the next project. And I was pretty good at it, but I wanted to build something. And so I get a call in April of '96 from a guy, Jim, many of you know, Bruce Lunsford. And Bruce was the founder of what is today Kindred, then called Vencor, named for ventilator care, this little niche that they'd figured out in the marketplace for something called an LTAC, which long-term acute care hospital, which is a huge part today of Kindred's business. And Bruce had this $500 million company in 1996 had gone to Tacoma, Washington, and bought a $2+ billion company. This minnow swallowed a whale, and it later gave him some indigestion, but that's a different conversation. And I say that with affection because I am a friend and a fan of Bruce's. But he was a big dreamer and had big ideas. And they bought a company called Hillhaven out of Tacoma, Washington. And Hillhaven was then the second largest after what was Beverly, which is today Golden Living, the second largest skilled nursing and rehabilitation company in the country. And they were a darn good company. They've been run for years out there. There's an interesting sort of geographic pockets of excellence in senior housing, and one of them happens to be in the Seattle to Portland, Oregon corridor. There's probably 24 companies that have come out there, and you've got real forward-thinking regulators out there. The state of Washington was one of the first to say 20 years ago, we need to have a Medicaid waiver program and allow Medicaid dollars to go into something called assisted living. So there was a lot of progressive thinking out there, and this was a good forward-thinking, skilled company. And so Bruce bought that, and he called me. Any of you that know Bruce, he's got the attention span of a strobe light. And he goes, can we have dinner? And he said, meet me for dinner. I got an idea. And I said, okay. And I said, where are we going to be? He said, let's meet at Porcini's. And that was another important dinner at Porcini's. So, and that's Louisville humor. Sorry. And so he meets me, and he said, we've got this company. He said, Wall Street has fallen in love with something called assisted living. And he said, honestly, I'm not sure I know what it is. He said, I think it's apartment houses for the elderly. And I said, okay. And he said, your family's got a real estate background, and you've been in state government, and you're a lawyer. He said, would you have an interest in we've got 19 of these buildings out of like 300 nursing homes they had, but 19 private pay assisted living buildings. He said, would you have an interest in spinning them out and seeing if you can raise some money, and maybe we'll create a separate company? That really was about the extent of the conversation. And I thought about it for a couple of days and did talk to my wife, and I went down and talked to Mr. Dahl at Greenbaum, and he said, and they were great. The law firm was great. He said, well, we sort of incubate guys like you or gals like you. He said, go out there, and if you fall on your face, you can always come back. Don't give up your law license, but you can always come back. And so Mr. Dahl and Mr. Leatherman and others sent me on my way, and my wife gave me her blessing. And about 4 days later, on literally a handshake. I never had a contract with Bruce. It was a handshake. We started in April, and in August, we took 19 communities out. Wall Street was nutty in love with this business because they'd seen the roller coaster of reimbursement for years in the acute care business and in the subacute, post-acute nursing home business. But the thing they liked about this business was that there were companies that were talking about building something for middle class, upper middle class. There's a big public policy issue about what we're going to do with the poor and the working poor over the next generation in terms of assisted living. But they were in love with it. And in 3 trips to the capital markets in 13 months, they gave a little company called Atria $310 million to go build assisted living communities. It's kind of nutty. And we did, and in about 3 years, we built 45 communities. And then through a story I won't bore you with, that company ended up being sold to a big investment bank in New York called Lazard. And now let's show you how life comes full circle. They recently sold that company 10 years later back to Ventas, which is the real estate side of what was Vencor. So Louisville has had this sort of amazing history of long-term care companies. So the Atria is still like the 3rd or 4th largest private pay senior housing company in the country, run very well by a guy named John Moore, who just recently moved to Louisville. He bought Scott Titchener's condo in Butchertown and lives in Butchertown with he and his wife. And they've got a couple hundred employees here, and they have 110 assisted living communities all over the country. And Bruce Lunsford, through an accidental dinner with me, I don't take a lot of the credit for their growth. They had about 60 when we sold it to them, but they've grown by another 40 communities. And it is a private pay provider of independent living, assisted living, and dementia care services. So you've got that company here, and they're doing wonderful things. Now they're owned by Ventas, which is this real estate investment trust run by a woman that Bruce hired. When their company got in trouble, they split the company in half. Operating company went one way, and it later went through a bunch of financial issues, and it came out of a bankruptcy. Today, Kindred, that's what Kindred is, that Paul Diaz and Bill Altman and all that crew runs. And the real estate side, run by a woman in Chicago that Bruce hired, still has at least half their corporate employees out on Hurstburn Lane. You go out to North Hurstburn Lane there, across from UPS headquarters, they've got 50 or 60 employees there. So they've got dual corporate headquarters. They're a very important corporate citizen. I had a meeting with them last night at 5, and she was in town, and their CEO was in town, or the president was in town. And again, how life comes full circle. They're our primary capital partner. Of our 103 communities, they own the real estate on about 85 of them, and we lease them from them. So that's a relationship that we've just kept and nurtured over time. They're the largest owner of senior housing in the world. They have, I don't know, 20, 30,000 of these units around the country. So they're an important capital provider, and the whole issue of how we're going to access capital to build the next generation of senior housing is critical in this country, and it'll come not only from government sources, but it'll come from private sources like Ventas. Then you've got there's several other great companies here. Obviously Kindred, you've got Pharmerica, you've got Signature. Signature attacks one of the most important public policy issues that we've got in this country, is that today with reimbursement where it is, I won't give you a big toot on reimbursement today, but where reimbursement it is and the cycles we go through in terms of taxes and revenue in our government, you can't find the capital today to build new skilled nursing and rehabilitation in this country. It's just very, very difficult to do it. You can find the capital occasionally if you have we own Oaklawn here in Jefferson County, and that's kind of a niche community. It doesn't take Medicaid. Most of our communities do. It's all Medicare, it's all private pay. But even that community in today's capital market, when that's a very high-end private pay property and sort of an exception to the rule, it would be a very difficult property to build. Gary, you've built an enormously beautiful, successful property, but you've got a unique not-for-profit situation there that makes it a unique place in the market. Signature's MO is that they've gone around the country not only building better operations and better processes and better training for their staffing, but actually taking old communities and retrofitting them and bringing them back to life, which is what you've got to do with the capital stock in our skilled nursing business in this country to improve the quality of service there. Then there's another company in town that, if you're not familiar with, that you ought to watch. It's been around 15 years. It's a quiet company. They've got a very interesting, unique model called Trilogy Healthcare. Many of you know Randy Bufford. I see heads nodding. And if you go to the Kroger store at Westport and Hubbard's Lane, and they're across from the Walden School, and he's got one in Louisville you can see out on Glen Ridge, out in Billtown Road off the Snyder Freeway. Randy's vision 15 years ago, and he's dead right about this, is that people want services. Ultimately they want, and Gary's doing the same thing over at his campus, they like the access of services on one campus. There's I'm going to talk here in just a minute a little bit more about this. But Randy's building, when you drive up to that Westport Place building, there's an entrance. You can drive if your grandmother's there for rehab or if she's there for long-term care, and you'll enter the skilled side. You can drive around to another entrance and have a completely separate entrance to a little more social model, and it's assisted living. It's about 60 units of skilled and about 40 units of AL. Now, if you go to the back of the house, there's one kitchen and one common area and all of that, but he'll have a secure dementia unit on the AL side. He'll have private pay assisted living there with a separate entrance. There's a whole cultural thing. The assisted living people will tell you they don't want to live with the dementia folks, and they sure don't want to see the skilled folks. And the skilled folks are over there, and they're hoping to go home, or at least most of them are hoping to go home. So in Louisville, and I apologize if any of your companies, if I've left you out, but there are really unique, interesting things going on here. And it's, you know, Nashville and Louisville are kind of the two in this part of the world. They are the two healthcare centers, and Louisville is the long-term care center in the country, sort of for brain power. And I think it's going to set us up for some interesting things, and I'll talk about some more of those in a moment. I won't jump your all's gun, but Hebert and Dr. Ramsey are aware. I mean, just in the last couple of weeks, 3 of our companies here, and it'll be announced soon, are collaborating on a joint academic effort with the university that I think will be real integral to how service is delivered in the next generation. Let me take a few minutes and just talk to you then. I mean, that's who we are. Elmcroft, just a 2-second advertisement. We're a privately held company. We're owned by officers and a interesting family in Toronto, Canada. And we don't have any plans to go public. We like being a private company. Ventas is our primary capital partner, not our only, but they're a huge supporter and partner of ours. We're headquartered here in Louisville. We operate 103 communities in 19 states. And we just acquired, we're sort of a minnow and whale thing, we just acquired 32 badly underperforming communities, so we're kind of knee-deep at work right now in turning those around and getting them up to the standard of care that we operate in. Most of these slides I cobbled together, and I apologize to Ken Deichwald.